Hey everyone, hope everyone's hanging in there. Everyone's doing all right. Everyone's got enough books to read. Today I am going to read you guys my book called Somewhere Else. And did you know that this is my favourite book that I've written about a duck called George? There we go. So here is George. Okay, right. Everyone comfortable? Let's go. And I'm starting with the end papers. I really love end papers. I know I say this a little bit, but I just love them. In these end papers, if you look carefully, I have lots of old pictures of suitcases that I've cut out from old catalogues, you see? So I've just collaged these old suitcases onto the end papers because this book is about travel, as you'll see very soon. Right. Some birds fly north. Some birds fly south. Here we go. We've got some birds here. I have some birds with hats, some birds with glasses, some birds are painted, some birds are drawn, all sorts of different birds flying north and south. Some birds take the bus. Do you see why these birds take the bus? These penguins? Most birds go somewhere. And here are some birds at the travel agency. Georges Laurent wasn't like most birds. And there is George, and he's baking a pie. George never went anywhere. Not here, not a little over here. Or here, not even here, not anywhere. I like it here better than anywhere somewhere else, he told himself. Besides, there was always something nice baking in the oven. So we see George, and he's right up on the hill next to his house. And there's a beautiful world in front of him with mountains and rivers, castles, and the sea, but for some reason he's not interested in going anywhere. Georges Laurent had a gift for baking the most astonishing pastries. Friends were always dropping by on their way to somewhere else. One morning, Penelope Thornwhistle declared, "This eclair is almost as spectacular as soaring high above a sunrise in the Andes. Let's fly there together, George. It will be a hoot." That's a really bad our joke. There's Penelope. But George wasn't interested. He always had an excuse. "Not today, Penelope. I've got brownies in the oven. I think this batch will win awards." So we see there's Penelope. And she's telling George all about this beautiful place in the Andes, but we can see he's not very interested, is he? Too busy baking. The following afternoon, Walter Greenberg popped in for some delectable apple strudel. "This apple strudel makes me think of Paris in the night, dear boy. Come see it with me, George. It's truly extraordinaire." "So sorry, Walter," said George. "I'd love to come, but I've got a mountain of ironing to do." So there we go. We've got Walter Greenberg there. And if we look across here, there's George. Do you think he's got a mountain of ironing to do? That's if you iron your socks perhaps, but there's only two of them, isn't there? The very next week, a flock of friends swooped in to sample some of George's prize-winning carrot cake. "Have you seen the Alaskan tundra in the fall?" they cried. "It's like this cake. There are no words to describe its beauty. How about whoa? Someone suggested. Whoa wasn't enough. George was going nowhere. Sorry, I've got a yoga class that day, he said. And again, George isn't interested. I like the idea of birds doing yoga. As the seasons passed by, everyone stopped asking George if he wanted to go somewhere else with them. He was far too busy, it seemed. Winter arrived and George found himself alone. There, we look there, we see George, and it's winter time, and he's watching the last of the birds fly out for the season. It's a bit of a sad picture, isn't it? It's very cold, doesn't it? Except for Pascal Lombard. Pascal was searching for a warm place to spend the winter. I wish I could fly, George, he said. I hear the Caribbean is nice this time of year. Why aren't you somewhere else, on a beach, in the sun? And I've even drawn George as if he was on a beach in the sun, you see. I've been busy learning flamenco songs on my guitar, said George. But you don't own a guitar, George, said Pascal. Actually, I've been watching the complete series of Lost in Space, said George. But you don't have a television, said Pascal. Well, in truth, I've been writing my memoirs, said George. And he's writing away there and it says, and it was the yummiest blackberry pie I ever baked on a Tuesday, the end. But you're only 5, said Pascal. You haven't done anything yet. Well, I would have gone somewhere else, said George. There's George. If I only knew how to fly. Oh dear. Poor George, he looks very sad there. He's dropped his wood bundle. George told Pascal how on that important day when everyone had learned to fly, he was simply doing something else. He had been making excuses not to fly ever since. So, as if there was just one day when everyone had learned to fly, George is at the fair and he's eating some fairy floss, you see. It just so happened that Pascal Lombard had an uncanny knack for solving tricky problems. George, I have an uncanny knack for solving tricky problems, he announced. We are going to teach you how to fly. They wasted no time. First they read some helpful books. We see in this helpful book, up the top there, it says flying in 5 easy steps. Step 1, climb tree. Step 2, jump out of a tree and fly into the distance. It's not very helpful. Step 3, soar. Step 4, flap. Step 5, land. It's that easy. But as we can see down here, it's not that easy, is it? That didn't work out so well. Then they got creative and George has been strapped to a kite. That didn't go so well either. And Pascal's got a bit distracted and he's let George go. Then they ran out of good ideas. It turned out Pascal Lombard didn't have much of a knack for solving tricky problems after all. See? I don't think I was meant to fly, said George sadly. I'll always be a stay-at-home kind of guy. George felt flat. Pascal felt flat. They spent the afternoon quietly reading by the fire. Just as Pascal thought maybe it was time to go, George pointed to Pascal's newspaper. What is that wonderful bubble thing? He said. So there they are reading by the fire, and that wonderful bubble thing is this old balloon. And here is this beautiful balloon, this very old poster of a balloon. It just so happened that Pascal Lombard was remarkably good with his hands. George, I'm remarkably good with my hands, he announced. We can build it. And so they did. It took all winter. It turned out Pascal Lombard wasn't actually very good with his hands. See, George is doing all the work. Finally, after some hiccups, there's Pascal, and he's got a bit burnt. And there he is. He nearly misses out on jumping in the basket. We are flying, Pascal, said George. Yes, we are, George, said Pascal. Where shall we go? I have some ideas, smiled George. They're finally up in the air, high above the clouds. Let's see. There's some sun and some birds. Let's see where they go. They travelled to all the places they had heard about, and some they hadn't. Paris in the night really is extraordinary, said George. There they are flying high above Paris in the night. And here they're flying above the Arctic Circle, and two bears are waving to each other. Now, if you look carefully here, what's this here? This is a narwhal. George and Pascal flew for months. The world was bigger and more brilliant than they had ever imagined. But something was missing. And on this side, they're flying high above the baobab trees of Madagascar. But something's missing. Do you guys know what they might be missing? What do you think they might be missing? Let's see. Got one more page. George's homemade pie. Where should we go next winter? Said Pascal. Anywhere, somewhere else, said George. And George has baked Pascal a lovely big cherry pie. So there we go. So this is a story about travel, and it's about getting out of our world and discovering new things. But it's also about coming home. And I know we're all spending a lot of time at home lately, but home is really great, isn't it? But in some ways you need to get out before you realise how fantastic home is. Oh, and on the back cover, there is a picture of George. And he's reading a book, and if you can see the title on the book, it says Life of Pi. That's another really bad joke. I'm good at bad jokes. Right, so that is the story of George Laurent, the duck who couldn't fly. Hope everyone enjoyed that. I enjoyed reading it. I will put up another story of mine tomorrow. Okay, in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and take care of each other. Okay, bye.